has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for the springing, fresh from the world. Sweet the rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet garden, sprung in completeness where his feet pass. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one light, Eden's all play. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day.
Thanks, Beth. Would you ring the chime? Good morning and welcome to Vashon Island Unitarian Fellowship. My name is Ted Claybaugh and I'll be our service leader today. We are a lay-led community, strengthened and enriched by weaving together the volunteer contributions and members and friends. If you are new, we are especially glad you are here. Please participate as you feel comfortable. Human connection and relationship are important parts of our community. Our fellowship is committed to individual freedom of belief, welcomes diversity, seeks to promote a sense of community, and fosters religion which enriches the spirit. Whoever you are, whomever you love, however you arrived here, you are welcome. Whether you are here for the first time or have been attending for years, I invite you to be fully present. As you are comfortable doing so, take this opportunity to slow down and to focus on your own breath. Breathe in the love that flows into you from the universe and hold it, feeling it flow throughout your body. Then exhale your own love out to those all whom you know, and beyond them back out to all people in the world. Then do it again, breathing slower as you feel yourself relaxing. Breathe in the love that flows into you from the universe and hold it, feeling it flow throughout your body. Then exhale your own love out to those all whom you know, and beyond them back out to all the world. I will ring the bell at the end of the silence. Vicki, would you like the chalice?
We light this candle that it may shine and burn brightly. May it be a beacon in the darkness for those who need it, an inspiration for those who serve humanity in this dark time of global fear. May it burn brightly for all those who work to nurture, educate, and empower those who have been marginalized throughout the world. For those who work to heal souls wounded by abuse, war, and an unjust criminal system. May it also burn brightly for all those who work to care for the sick while they risk their own health and lives. For all those who work to serve all of humankind, that we may one day be free and live in an equitable and just society.
So may it be. Beautiful, beautiful words. What draws us here today? What brings us into the presence of each other here in this virtual space of community? We come here for many reasons. For the warmth of human company, for a few moments to pause in the hurry of our days, and to learn from each other what we need to live well and truly. To celebrate this life with all of its troubles and its beauty, to be reminded of our own humanity and the unending power of love. We are here to be reminded of what the power of our hearts and our hands can bring about when we act in the world. On this day, when we have awakened, exhaling, ready for what comes next, we are here in both gratitude and in grief. Grief for all that has been lost, and gratitude for what can be healed and what goodness can be created. We pause now for a breath and ready ourselves for the new journey. It is good to be together today, friends.
In our covenant of right relations, we promise to honor each other. In doing this, we honor the common humanity and sacred spirit within each of us. We support each other in difficult times and celebrate our joys together. One way of doing this is by sharing our joys and concerns with each other. If you have a joy you'd like to share, or a burden that might be eased by sharing it in community, you are invited to share it. Let us take a moment in silence to prepare our hearts. All who wish to share are invited to raise their hands. You are also always welcome to say you are lighting a silent candle. Alex.
Good morning, everyone. I wanted to say how grateful I am for technology that allows us to be together through the internet, and I'm hoping that we don't have power outages where I'm cut off from everybody. It's just so nice to have this beyond any words I can say. I love connecting.
All right.
Mary Van Gimmert.
Now, am I on?
You're on.
Oh, okay. Something came up on my screen. I had a wonderful 77th birthday yesterday out on my porch on Burton Hill, and several people stopped over. A couple of them brought their thermoses, so we had some good libations, and it was just, a number of my 7 brothers and sisters called me up during the day and evening. It was just a great birthday. I'm thankful.
Who else? Sheila.
Good morning, everybody. I'm grateful because the salmon are back on Vashon. And I know Donna is a salmon watcher, and I don't know if anyone else is, but I've seen 3 so far, which is excellent. And I think the total is up to 10 on the island. So if you're out walking along Judd or Shingle Mill, keep an eye out.
Thanks, Sheila. Always good to see those salmon return. Anybody beyond our Zoom meeting today? And our next song is There Is a Love.
There is a love holding all
In our covenant of right relations, we promise to honor our commitments. As individuals, we contribute time, energy, skills, and financial assets as we participate in the mission, goals, and ministry of the fellowship. Together, we commit to building a strong foundation for the future of this fellowship. Once a month, we donate money during a specific service to a charitable organization supported by our fellowship. However, today's offering supports this fellowship, our beloved community of people learning together to make love real. If your offering goes toward your annual pledge, please make a note of it on your check. Many in our beloved community place their offering each week in a jar or other container and then write a check for that amount each month and mail it to the treasurer at VIUF, P.O. Box 1127, Vashon, Washington 98070, or you can donate through PayPal on our website. Beth will now sing "We Give Thanks," and everyone else will be muted.
Oh, we give thanks for this precious day, for all gathered here and those far away, for the times we share with love and care. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day, for all gathered here and those far away, for the time we share with love and care. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day.
Thanks, Beth. Thanks very, very much. I've been looking forward to hearing from our guest speaker today, the Reverend Linda Hart from the Tacoma UU congregation. She has spoken to us many times before, and we are always excited and delighted to have her. Her messages are always meaningful. Today, her topic is "Who is Saved?" based on the life of early UU minister John Murray.
Thanks, Ted, for that introduction. It's always a pleasure to be with you all, even in this quirky, strange time that we're in right now. I'm delighted to be here and to talk with you about Universalism and John Murray, one of our founders. Ambrose Bierce, the author of the Devil's Dictionary, had something to say about both sides of our religious family. About the Unitarians, he quipped that we are those who deny the divinity of Trinitarians. About Universalists, he wrote that we are those who forego the advantage of a hell for people of another faith. Thomas Starr King, a preacher who knew a lot about both Unitarians and Universalists, noted that Universalists believed that God was too good to damn them, and that Unitarians believed themselves too good to be damned. When the two denominations merged in 1961, our Unitarian heritage was the one that got the most notice, most attention, and it was years before we routinely would say Unitarian Universalists. We were almost always called Unitarians, at least where I grew up and when I grew up, that was the case. When I served the North Universalist Chapel Society in Woodstock, Vermont, folks in our village would always call us the Unitarian Church, though that word didn't appear anywhere in our name. As I studied for the ministry all those years ago, I found a deep resonance for universalism, a profound connection to the challenging faith that is universalism. It was 250 years ago, back in September, late September, that John Murray arrived in New Jersey from England. Murray is often described as the founder of universalism in the United States, and his arrival is celebrated as the start of that thread of our faith community here. The story of his arrival is one I've loved for many, many years, and I'll tell you, but first a little background about him. In his young adulthood, Murray became a preacher of the strict and punishing Calvinism that had been his childhood faith. But as he grew, he was drawn to a more gentle faith, in particular, the teachings of John Wesley. He was drawn to Methodism in England. Wesley, you may recall, spoke at one point of how his heart was strangely warmed as he heard a teaching about the changes that Christ brings about in the lives of believers. He had a deep experience of the assurance of salvation. Murray connected with that community, and as part of it, he occasionally led prayers. In his ongoing study of religion, he was further moved by the teachings of John Relly, a Welshman, who went so far as to say that everyone was a part of the mystical body of Christ, and that none could be lost. It was a radical thought. None could be lost. Let's pause for a moment and think about this. In a world that was dominated by punitive theologies, the Calvinist and Catholic teachings that all are born into sin and can only be saved from an eternity of torture and, well, hell, by being chosen before birth as one of the elect, or by following a rigid plan to gain salvation through rituals controlled by priests. Imagine the sense of relief in finding a faith that acknowledges your primal blessedness, an overwhelming promise of wholeness and goodness. It was deeply radical for its time. And this was the faith that inspired John Murray, that enlivened him and gave him hope in the world. And he deeply needed it. While he was a good preacher, it was not a work that could make him a decent living. So he tried and failed at many enterprises and racked up debt upon debt upon debt. After he was converted to Universalism, his life became even more chaotic and painful. The Dictionary of Unitarians and Universalists sums it up like this. They say, his only son died in infancy. His wife also died. And soon after that, he learned of the death of 4 of his siblings. He was thrown into debtor's prison. Although he was rescued by his brother-in-law and eventually paid his debts, he remained too depressed to engage in the preaching that John Relly had urged upon him. At that time, he wished to, quote, pass through life unheard, unseen, unknown to all, as though I'd ne'er had been. In 1770, he resolved to quit his old life and in the old world and start afresh in the new. And here begins the story of the single miracle in the history of Unitarian Universalism. Murray set sail on the good ship Hand in Hand. Sometimes it's been reported as God's Hand, depending upon who you listen to. And he headed for New York for a new life. While underway, the ship went off course and was grounded off the shore of New Jersey near what is now Toms River. Now, you may not know or remember from your early teachings of US history that part of the country, New Jersey and Rhode Island and Pennsylvania, was largely settled by freethinkers and religious rebels, including Universalists. Thomas Potter was one of those Universalists who had settled right there where Murray had come ashore. And he had become so convinced of the truth of universalism that he had gone ahead and built a chapel in which the word of universalism, the good news of universalism, could be preached. So when the ship grounded, and it became clear that they would not be able to leave until the tides rose and the winds changed, the passengers went ashore and found some housing where they could. And you'll not believe who knocked on Thomas Potter's door in order to find a place to stay. Of course, it was John Murray. In one version of the story, Potter opens the door and says right out to Murray, "Are you the Universalist preacher come to preach in my chapel?" In another one, it has Murray admitting during dinner that he indeed was a preacher of the Universalist gospel. And either way, Potter wanted Murray to stay till Sunday so that he could preach in his chapel. Murray, believing that he would be long gone by then, said that if the ship hadn't left by Sunday, that he would indeed preach. And by some miracle, the winds remained still and the tide did not rise enough. And Murray ascended the pulpit of that small chapel in New Jersey and preached the gospel of universalism. Now, Murray went on to settle in Gloucester, Massachusetts eventually, where he met and married Judith Sargent. And the two of them were apparently quite a force of nature. And they together built Universalism into a dynamic, loving denomination by creating an institution to support it and by their deep evangelism. Remember that church I served in Vermont, for example? It was one of 5 within a 15-minute drive. They drove Universalism. Actually, I'll just pause and say, I was led to believe that there were as many as 200 Universalist chapels in Vermont when I served there. Not while I was serving there, but back in the days of the great flourishing of Universalism in the United States. It was a faith that really flourished here, had the kind of message that enlivened and drew people together. Now, I'll offer just one other little fun fact about Murray. He was the first chaplain for the army that would later be the United States Army. George Washington appointed him during the Revolutionary War to serve as a chaplain, noting that he was a full chaplain and was to be respected as such, even as his gospel was not necessarily accepted by all. The Tahoma intern this morning is actually preaching for Veterans Day about John Murray as the first chaplain of the United States Army. The message of universalism, the message that is at its heart, is one that is essential, I think, and has become more and more central to my own theological position. A belief in the essential blessedness of humanity is radical and runs counter to our human propensity to divide and rank each other, to create separations between ourselves and those who don't look like us, live like us, believe like us, vote like us. In the weeks after the last election back in 2016, I watched as one of my friends would say, "my friend," before saying the then president-elect's name, working to counter her internal desire to be separate from him. She reminded herself that we all are beloved children of God, if you will, and that we are all born blessed. These 4 years later, it's even more difficult for me and perhaps for you to claim our kinship across political divides, but still it remains. It is a deep and difficult practice to acknowledge each person's worth and dignity, each person's essential blessedness in the world. I think one of the most striking examples of a contemporary universalist is Brian Stevenson, the founder of the Equal Justice Initiative, and the author of Just Mercy. Stevenson writes about a moment when he found himself talking to himself about what he was doing in the world. He writes, "I can't just leave this work. Why am I doing it?" He was waiting in his office as one of his clients, Jimmy Dill, was being executed. He reflects on it, quoting from him. "After working for more than 25 years, I understood that I don't do what I do because it's required or necessary or important. I do it because I have no choice. I do it because I am broken too. My years of struggling against inequality, abusive power, poverty, oppression, and injustice had finally revealed something to me about myself. Being close to suffering, death, executions, and cruel punishments didn't just illuminate the brokenness of others. In a moment of anguish and heartbreak, it also exposed my brokenness." He continues, "Our brokenness is also the source of our common humanity, the basis for our shared search for comfort, meaning, and healing. Our shared vulnerability and imperfection nurtures and sustains us, and our capacity for compassion." Even more, Stevenson reminds us again and again in his work that we are far more than the worst thing that we've ever done. If we've lied, we're more than a liar, more than a killer, more than a drug addict. The notion that we are not defined by the worst thing we've ever done, the recognition in that each person is precious and worthy of respect and care, is so lost in our culture that celebrates wealth and winning and hierarchy and division. This practice, and it has to be a practice, of acknowledging the worth and dignity of every person, the practice of compassion and care for all, the practice of extending love into the world is deeply countercultural and so desperately needed. Many years ago, a Presbyterian friend of mine preached a sermon about who we might meet in heaven. It was when I was working with homeless teens in Chicago. And before John spoke, several of my work colleagues had talked about the folks that we had worked with, these kids who were homeless, who had run away from home and were making their way on the streets by selling their bodies for sex. And we heard stories of parents who had abused and abandoned their children. John gave us a litany of who we would bump up against when we found ourselves in heaven, and it was just these people. He invited us to attend to our own shortcomings, all the times that we've failed and fallen miles and miles short of what we've meant to do. He called upon us to be aware of our own shared humanity and all its flaws and beauties, and recognize that we were all in this together. And to be clear, this doesn't mean that there aren't natural consequences for what we do and how we live. There are. This isn't a get out of jail free card to believe in the gospel of universalism, but rather it is that deep recognition of our common humanity and our love for one another that can save us as we try to make the world better. So who is saved? We all are. Not by some magical or mystical grace laid upon us by a benevolent deity, but we are saved by casting our lot among the community of this planet, the animals and the trees and oceans, no less than our fellow humans. We are always saved by knowing that we are in this together, and that the only way to get through is with each other. This is our universalist heritage, our blessed universalist heritage, and we are saved by it. I invite you now to pause for a few moments, to breathe in and breathe out. And take time if there is something that has touched you in the words or the music today, in our sharing of joys and sorrows. If there is something that has opened your heart, to set an intention for how you will carry it into your life. Let us pause in stillness together. So may it be. Amen.
Thank you so much, Linda. That was a marvelous sermon. It's really enlightening for all of us to hear about the early founder of our faith and to hear the miracle that brought him to New Jersey and to preach in that Universalist church, and for the breadth and sweep of your talk today, covering all the way up through Brian Stevenson's marvelous book about Just Mercy, which was such an important book and one that I read and was just very moved by, and even talking about the election. It was just great, and thank you so very, very much. We really appreciate it. Our closing song for our service today is Spirit of Life. Words are from Lincoln's second inaugural address They seem especially fitting given the bitter election campaign that has been fought between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. With malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right, as God gives us to see the right, let us strive to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to do all which we may do to achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves. Vicki, if you would you please extinguish the chalice? And today's closing song is Spirit of Life.
We just sang it.
Oh, I'm sorry, is Lean on Me.
Do you want me to ring the bell? Oh.
Oh, not yet. Today's closing song is Lean on Me. Oh yeah, and Beth, if you would ring the chime. Thank you. And then Stephen, if you would play Lean on Me.
I think we have a little bit of technical difficulty. I will be right back. I'm going to see if I can help out.
Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain, we all have sorrow. But if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Please swallow your pride if I have things you need to borrow, for no one can fill those of your needs that you won't let show. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. If there is a load you have to bear that you can't carry, I'm right up the road. I'll share your load if you just call me. Lean on me when you're not strong. I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. You just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you'd understand. We all need somebody to lean on.
Before we start the announcements, I want to give special thanks to everyone on our excellent UU Voices team, Ann Lewis, my wife Vicki, and to Earl Gott. And special thanks to Beth White, who is always so willing and able to volunteer. And special thanks to Stephen Wren, our tech, who did a fabulous job of keeping our service on track. And once again, to Linda Hart for the wonderful job she did. And finally, to Kate O'Hare, who was always a great help for our services. Now on to announcements. If you have an announcement for activities that are sponsored by our fellowship, please briefly tell us now. Also, please note that if you'd like to let others know about something that's more general, but still of interest, post it on our Facebook page or email it to our administrator to be included in our weekly VIUF email. All right, Pamela.
I just wanted to announce that next week after the service is going to be the book club discussion about American Dirt by Janine Cummings. And it tells the tale of a mother and her child in Mexico that are fleeing for their lives, immigrating to the United States. And it gave me a real understanding of what immigrants go through trying to get to the promised land. And I immediately sent a donation into the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee that helps migrants and things coming in. But I hope any of you that would come, it's going to be starting just after the end of the service next week. So it said, I think in the newsletter 1:30, but it's getting over sooner than that. So it'll probably be closer to 12:15 or something. Anyway, right after the service next week.
All right, thank you, Sheila.
Yes, this is also about next week. I'd like to invite everybody to come to next week's service. Reverend Carla Prine is going to be talking about healing in a time of cultural fermentation, which should be interesting. And as part of this, she asked that we think about completing this sentence. The healing I am longing for looks something like blank. So if you could think about that and email to me your answers, and I will pass them along to Carla. She will share them during the service. And this information will also be in the weekly news emails. So you can have a link there to my email. And I also want to announce that next week is our week in the month where we're going to have our community offering. And the community offering on that day will go to the Vashon Maury Food Bank. So there will also be information in the weekly newsletter to get you going on writing your check and sending it along for the food bank. So thank you very much.
Well, I'd like to invite you to come make a holiday swag for your front door. Vicki Claybaugh and I have cut a whole bunch of greens and holly, and we've got wire and ribbon. So come on down. Open from 1 to 4 today, not this next Sunday, but the next 2 Sundays after that.
And the sun is shining right now.
Yes, it is.
Wait, what are those? Where and when again? Could you repeat that, please?
Oh, sure. It's in the newsletter, but it's at my house. And unfortunately, I live at the south end of Maury Island. So the address is 9601 Southwest 288th Street. So you go to Docton, and then in Docton, you know, when you make that left turn and heading south, you're on 99. You just keep going down that until you get into my neighborhood. You turn off, you just keep going straight rather than turning right to go down to Manzanita. And then there's a left and a right and a left. And you get to Southwest 288. It's you know, you're 3 blocks away from my house. I mean, it's just 1 block. Jig jugs.
Sorry,
All right.
dates again. Sorry, which days?
I think it's today and in 2 weeks.
Okay, so it's
15th and the 29th.
15th and 29th. Thank you.
Yeah.
And the December 6th as well.
Okay. Oh, and Tanya, could you put in the chat room
Oh, yeah.
the address and
Of
those
course.
dates again? That way everybody will be able to see it. Okay, thank you. Vicki, did you have an announcement?
Yes, I just finished listening to American Dirt and I have a subscription to Audible. And if you would like to have Audible on your phone to listen to, if you send your email to me and you've never signed up for Audible, I can send you American Dirt. Everybody, I mean, I could send out 50 of them as long as you've never signed up before. So if you'd like to have a copy of that to listen to, and I listen to it, like Pamela said, it's hard to put down, and I got through it in like 3 days. So I'm vclaybaugh@comcast.net, and I'm also in the directory as that. So if you want a copy of it, just flip your email to me, and I'll slip the book to Audible back to you.
I
Thank
second
you.
that. It's an amazing, amazing book and
Yeah.
wonderful to listen to.
Yes, Mary.
Hi, Ann and George, and thank you very much. The hospitality community does a great job of sending recognition of birthdays. And Ann knows I come from Wisconsin, and she sent me this gorgeous Georgia O'Keeffe card, a very old one. And Georgia O'Keeffe went to my high school in Madison, which was a boarding school in the 1940s. At Edgewood High School of the Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary is the full name. And Ann and George remembered that. Thank you. Great work you're doing.
And anybody else have an announcement?
I just want to announce, Margaret, your sweater is awesome. I'm going to put you on spotlight for everyone because I just love that so much. I love your sweater. Cute. Oh, you're muted. We can't hear you.
Okay.
But it's really cute.
All right. Robbie, did you have an announcement?
I do. For those of you who are yearning to see our children, which I think we all are, Leah is going to be leading the service on, I think it's the 13th or the 14th of December, and it's going to be focusing on, the various multi-faith things that we celebrate during December with kids. So put that one on your schedules for sure. And also, if you don't normally read the newsletter, I would ask you to, in general, but also I put something in today asking if folks would like to join me in a study group of the Widening the Circle, which is this incredible document which came out about how to keep the Unitarian Universalist Church relevant in this world and true to its living tradition. So there's a link to it in there. And if you're interested, just shoot me off something and say that you'd like to participate. Thanks.
All right. Anybody else? Okay, I don't see anybody else, so.
Hey.
Oh, Margaret.
Okay, just a minute here. I have to stand up so you can see what it says.
Passion can be bought, style one must possess. I love that.
Okay.
That's great.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thanks, Margaret.
You got style. Margaret's got style.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else with an announcement? I think we need to put a picture of Margaret's sweater in the newsletter.
I agree.
Oh, I have a quick one. Judy just texted me just for everybody. It says, I said, we're sending you love. We miss you this Sunday. She said, thanks, Alex. Sally's niece and her granddaughter are just arriving, and Burl's son and his lady friend are still visiting her. So we all join you this morning. Greetings all. I'm hoping I might be able to catch this message online sometime later.
Oh,
all right. Okay, thanks for passing that on, Alex. Any other announcements? All right, let's have a show of hands as to how many would like to go into breakout rooms this morning, or would we just as soon everybody stay right where we are and just enjoy talking to each other? Who would like to go into breakout rooms? Well,
Open to
let's
everything.
just stay here and let people talk as long as they want to. And, you know, we can talk on as long as we want, as long as it doesn't interfere with the Seahawks game.
Can the chat room be open to everybody?
It should be everyone publicly and privately now.
No, all I have is 2 people that it can go to. Everyone, Linda. Oh, Linda, good. Great.
Great.
And Jay Inslee just gave a talk that we can all watch. It started at 11 when we started, so we'll need to watch it afterwards.
Good call.
He told us something new.
Well, you're all welcome to unmute yourselves. Should we go now in peace before we officially break, Ted?
Sure, let's go now in peace.
Okay. Go now in peace. Go now in peace. May the spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Nathan.
Good to see
Thanks,
you all.
Ted.
Great to see you.
I'm gonna go head out and take care of some pets. Bye-bye.
Bye, Nathan.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Linda, I loved your service.
Thanks very much. I'm happy to answer questions or hear comments if you all, if anybody wishes to share.
I thought it was really interesting, Linda, that, you know, Murray, you know, had that, you know, the contrast between the Universalists and their beliefs and the Unitarians and their beliefs. And I wonder if you could tell us, say that again, because I was so important that I wanted to write it down, but I didn't get a chance.
You mean the jokes at the beginning? Were y'all laughing?
Right.
It's hard to tell when, you know, on this, and it's one of the things I really cherish about worship is being able to invite people into laughter. So Ambrose Bierce said, and do you all know Ambrose Bierce, the Devil's Dictionary? Lots of really wonderful, wicked definitions. He said that Unitarians denied the divinity of Trinitarians, and that Universalists Universalists gave up the pleasure of hell for people of other faiths. That was Ambrose Bierce. And then Thomas Starr King, who was had connections with both our Unitarian and Universalist heritage, is also a historic figure for California in particular, an interesting guy all around. He said that Unitarians, Universalists believed God to be too good to damn them, and Unitarians believed themselves too good to be damned.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for the smiles that I'm seeing.
I wanted to just say, Linda, thank you. I wrote down, our brokenness is also our shared humanity. Did I get that right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's so important right now. Yeah. So
Yeah,
thank
and that's
you.
Brian Stevenson.
There's also a movie about Brian Stevenson, Just Mercy. Have you seen that, Linda?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
Any other questions?
Actually, I do have a question also, Linda. You characterized our society by four words: wealth, hierarchy. I can't even read my other, and I think I missed the other two.
Okay, so you're going to make me go through my papers, which are all on the floor in a
Oh, I'm
disarray.
so sorry.
So I'll get to it, but y'all talk among yourselves.
Okay.
I'd like to hear the rest of the story. I mean, I want to know what happened next. I mean, I'm looking forward to reading more about from the seed that was planted that Sunday. How did Universalism then expand and develop?
Well, it actually, we typically tell the story about John Murray, going ahead and doing it, but it was really Judith Sargent Murray, his wife, was an institutionalist, and she was the one who largely created it. It was a huge evangelism, right? They would send preachers out to found these little congregations all across the U.S. There still is. And they built an organization that was unlike the Unitarians, that was regionally based. So you had a Vermont Universalist Association, and one in New York and one in Georgia, and that sort of thing. That helped to grow the faith at the point. I think it's like the turn of into the 19th century. Universalism was massive, just, huge. Like I say, 200 congregations in Vermont, right? Little teeny weeny Vermont. But that was it was circuit riders and kind of Johnny Appleseeding.
And the seminary then was Harvard, or where did
No, they, I'd have to look that up. My guess is that they didn't have, that Universalism came out of a different kind of perspective. That so Harvard was and Unitarians were very much about the educated ministry, the learned ministry, and Universalism was more focused on, I think, the movement of the heart rather than the movement of the mind in its early days. That said, St. Lawrence University was founded by Universalists, and that was, I think, also a place where there was training done for ministers.
more common, dominant in Canada rather than Unitarianism, or am I wrong?
It's much more, it's a US kind of phenomenon. It's not so much Canadian. At least in my knowledge of it, which is not as deep as it might be.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of gotta love it. All right, I'm still looking for those 4 words.
It was in the last third, I would say.
Yeah, well, it's not like the pages are in any good order here.
Okay.
There it is. Wealth, winning, hierarchy, and division.
Division. Okay, thank you.
Linda, when did Unitarian Universalism become more prevalent on the West Coast of the United States?
Oh, gracious. So history is not my strong suit, just as a note. I don't think I could answer that without doing a little looking back at history. It moved west, as human beings moved west. And it would have been one or the other at that time, right? We merged in 61. So it would have been the 2 denominations moving at different times. And there was always in Unitarianism, there was a significant and concerted effort to move it west. That's why Meadville Theological School was founded in Meadville, Pennsylvania, in order to, be the outpost on the way to the West. It was the Western leaning theological school there in Meadville, Pennsylvania, as the doorway to the West. Universalism, and my history's weaker on universalism than it is on Unitarianism. Universalism did have a movement west through the same kind of evangelism. It was a less centralized organization. It really was focused on these regional, shoot, what was the word they used? Word is evading me at the moment, but regional organizations that would send out circuit riders to do it. So there wasn't kind of a concerted, oh, let's move it westward kind of thing. I would guess it arrived in the same kind of time that most folks arrived, civilization, as it were, arrived in the West.
Any other questions for Linda?
I was wondering, I tend to remember that there was a lot of kind of evangelism and what do you call it, revivalist activity kind of in the mid 1800s. And that seems like when a lot of the celibate communities, the Shakers and the Raphites and all those folks were big. And I was wondering how the Unitarians or the Universalists participated in that. Did they also have a big surge in activity in the mid 1800s?
Not particularly. In the earlier part of the century, there were movements that, for example, Bronson Alcott, Louisa May's dad, who was that was a Unitarian family, founded some kind of utopian communities that have a similarity to some of the Shakers and the others who were creating those kinds of communities. But I wouldn't say that it was a major thread in Unitarianism of the time or Universalism of the time. Are you waving goodbye, Anne?
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah. So not a big impact. During that period of time, there was among Unitarianism, again, my Universalist history is weaker than my Unitarian history. Among that around that time, there was a lot of conversation and a lot of controversy going on between folks who were in New England and people who were populating the Midwest at that point, where you were seeing kind of the first glimmers of humanism coming into play in the Unitarian Church. De-emphasis around God and Jesus as the center of the faith at that time, leaning more into more rationality, more science, more of that kind of trend. So does that answer your question well enough?
Yeah, we used to live in central Illinois for a long time, so we visited a lot of these places. We were particularly fond of New Harmony, where the Raphites settled. They're another celibate community.
Yeah, I don't think Unitarians ever went in for that, went that far. As the kind of celibate, those celibate communities, but there were movements towards utopian communities. As I say, Bronson Alcott in New England was founded one, and there were others that don't come off the top of my head quite so easily.
I guess my other question, which is unrelated, is in my career as a Unitarian, then Unitarian Universalist, because I've hanging out in Unitarian churches since I was at least 3. The Unitarian personality has always seemed to me to dominate at the churches I've been at. It was just classic. When we had paper orders of service, people would take notes and, you know, and write down the references. And one of my ministers used to say, oh, don't bother to write it down. I'll put the references on the website. And that is the same minister that at some point when we were discussing some religious adult education program said, or maybe it was a social action, I've forgotten, that, well, food is not a Unitarian issue. Education, that's a proper Unitarian issue. And so I've mostly been exposed to a much more intellectual bent that, you know, you need references, you always, and the Universalist side seems almost to tag on. It's like, yep, it's in the 7 principles. But I've tended to feel like it isn't taken as seriously somehow. And I'm just wondering what your perspective is as a minister.
You know, that's a standard characterization of the two. You know, it's kind of, it's the Thomas Stark King, you know, Unitarians believe themselves too good to be damned, you know, and Universalists believe God too good to, I mean, that distinction made in the late 19th century rings true to folks who know the two denominations very well, and Unitarianism, I think, has that rational side, has dominated the larger organization, partly because well, there's a lot of historical stuff about that. We took on the Unitarian model of governance instead of the Universalist, meaning a centralized place of power. The humanist movement of the 1950s had a huge impact on Unitarianism, and that did come to dominate. That it was about, you know, kind of how can we rationally think through this? You know, what are the sources I cite? Who are my, you know, references in all of this? But it's a bit too stark to kind of say, well, you know, the Unitarians were the thinkers and the Universalists were the feelers, which is often how it gets characterized. That there was some measure of both in both, and I think always the excellent thinkers among us never lost sight of both sides of that. That yes, it matters that we think through things clearly and use logic and reason, and that it is not insignificant to have our hearts moved. It is not insignificant in the long run to be feeling our way into what is good and right and true.
I've been sort of wondering whether we don't need to tune into the Universalist side rather more in this post-election period.
Not a bad idea.
We need to figure out where the worth and dignity of the other half of the country is.
Yep.